everyone, Sarah Papp here. I am here today with my guest, Jill Farmer, author of There's Not Enough Time. And I'm so excited to be talking to Jill today. I think that this is a topic that a lot of us really relate to. I think that a lot of us go through our busy lives and tell ourselves, there's not enough time. I have a busy work, busy family life, and that's just reality. So for those who are not familiar, Jill used to be a very busy TV reporter and anchor, as well as mom. And this was very much your story. And then you made a shift in your life and are now a certified master life coach and are now teaching people about how to reclaim time. So Jill, for those who aren't really familiar with your story and your work, can you tell us more about how you made this evolution, how you're now at a place where you're teaching others how to reclaim time?
Well, I made that evolution excruciatingly slowly and painfully. So my hope and my wish is always that it's a little more painless for others, and that's part of my passion, is teaching other people so they don't have to experience that same angst that really was part of my life for a very long time. Ultimately, I ended up quitting my job in what a lot of people would have considered the height of my career as an Emmy award-winning TV reporter and anchor, just so I could try to find some degree of sanity in my life. Mm-hmm. And problem was, it was just one of many times in my life I was trying to change the external circumstances of my life in order to fix what was wrong, when ultimately the issue was inside of me, and it was the belief that I had to be sort of panicked and that there really wasn't enough time in order to motivate myself to try to do things or get anything meaningful in my life done. It was exhausting and depleting and overwhelming, and I just spent a lot of nights collapsing, exhausted in the bed, wondering what in the heck I accomplished that day. And I finally sort of got fed up with it.
Yeah, I like how you said motivating. I think that a lot of us use this as a motivator in our busy lives, or as just this is why I can't do certain things, because I don't have time, and I try and busy myself to motivate myself to get more done, and it's not working.
Yeah, and I think, recently I was having a conversation, and motivation is something that takes a lot of effort and energy. And it's perfectly fine to try to motivate ourselves to do things at times, but if we can learn to fuel ourselves from inspiration and allow momentum to roll in a way that doesn't require that same gearing up that motivation does, we find that we have more energy in reserve to be creative and come up with new ideas and have meaningful connections and relationships, and the things that I think really give life that richness that ultimately is what most of us are looking for.
Right. So what if I'm reading your book and I'm thinking, Jill, this is great, these tips are wonderful, but I have a really demanding job. I have this much work, and there's deadlines which give me this much time to do it. And I'm just thinking the reality of it is that I don't have enough time. So how do I make that type of shift if that's the way that I'm seeing the picture? That's reality.
And that's 99% of the people that come to me say, I'm the exception. Yeah, but that's great. But, and I don't care whether they're the top surgeon at a leading research hospital doing 12 hours of life-saving procedures a day, or a stay-at-home mom or dad. We all have our circumstance story, that it's our circumstance that is creating the conditions that are causing frenzy. And then sometimes we're just so sure that it's the circumstance, and if we can't change the circumstance, then we're trapped there forever. Mm-hmm. So the thing to remember is the story that we don't have enough time, or that there's too much to do, triggers this automatic brain brain response. It's not really a response, it's an automatic brain reaction, which means that we act without thinking. A reaction is like that. And it's causing that automatic reaction, or we have a time to ponder anything, or be thoughtful or mindful about anything, because it's coming from the most primitive part of our brain, the part that triggers that fight or flight response. A lot of people have heard of fight, flight, or freeze, and it's just that response that's meant to keep us safe when there's impending danger or a threat of any kind, which is fabulous when we're in actual physical danger. Right. For most of us, that represents very little, or basically 0% of our time. Yet, because of the way that we're wired, and if we're not careful, every situation in our life, particularly a busy lifestyle or a culture at a workplace that fosters this sense of not enoughness, triggers that fight or flight response. And when we're in fight or flight response, our brains literally act without thinking. Great if we're trying to run away from a tiger chasing us in the wild, that the blood is draining from our brain and into our legs and allowing us to move quickly or to hide in a cave somewhere. Not so useful when we are trying to resource gather and be innovative, which I think is the only way to survive in this new economy. And so it literally causes us, when we're in fight or flight mode, it causes our brains to work less efficiently. It causes our bodies to work less efficiently. It generally causes us to show up in the world relationally in a way that's the opposite of what we want it to be. And it costs us enormous amounts of time because we make stupid mistakes. We're unable to simplify, to be efficient, to be productive. So it slows us down. Just by thinking the thought there's not enough time, or continually telling us the story and creating those ruts in our neural pathways, we cost ourselves enormous amounts of time. And I think you can study every time management system in the world and efficiency programs, and I think you could do that all day long, 24 hours a day, nonstop. And if you still believe there's not enough time, you are still going to be in a perpetual state of panic and overwhelm, which looks like either a hamster on a wheel and or that proverbial 10-ton weight of overwhelm on your shoulders that causes you to feel like you just don't even know where to start. Either one of those action modalities tends to keep us from doing meaningful work or moving forward in the world.
Okay, so I have recognized I'm having the thought, there's not enough time, and I'm spinning, I'm in that state. So it sounds like I'm in fight or flight. And it's just that knee-jerk reaction. You know,
right.
I love the word reaction because it does make me think of just that physical knee-jerk, it happens.
Right.
So I'm in it. And I recognize that I'm in it. And I'm at work, I'm at my desk, I'm trying to get stuff done. What do I do when I recognize that I've just had a reaction? What do I do instead?
Yeah, I love it. The neuroscientists call it actual cranial abduction when that happens. Because literally the higher thinking parts of our brain go offline. So the first thing is to notice, usually there's some kind of a body reaction when we're in that scared fight or flight mode. For some people, it's just a tightening in their neck, a clenching of their toes or fingers, that I get kind of a roiling or burning sensation in my gut. Other people feel this like burst of fear energy up in their chest area. That sensation can, instead of being the trigger that we need to go do a bunch of stuff or be scared about something or go complain to somebody else or hide out and procrastinate, which is what it tends to launch us in a reactionary state now. Instead, we can pause for a microsecond and say, oh, that sensation is telling me that I'm having there's not enough time thought again. And in the act of noticing, that is one of the most important steps you can do. Notice it. According to all kinds of lot smarter brain scientists than me, like the people who developed acceptance and commitment therapy, and they say that just in the act of noticing, we had our brains hooked up to functional MRI technology. Instead of just having that tiny little fight or flight center, the amygdala back here, lighting up, we would go from that to just say, oh, I notice I'm having the thought. Our entire brain would light up. The part of the brain that can resource and can come up with better ideas instead of just continuing to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, which is, of course, the definition of idiocy. That higher functioning part of our brain gets triggered. So that is the most important thing we can do. Step number one is just notice you're having a thought. You literally change your brain chemistry. You change your ability to think and act in the world.
Yeah. I wrote down this little part in your book of noticing. And you also talked about gratitude in that moment when you notice. And you said consciously connecting to gratitude is a great restart button for your mind. Take a minute to list 5 things you are deeply and genuinely grateful for right now, and you will stop your reactions before they start spinning out of control, eating your time. I loved that part of it because I think that it speaks so much to what you were just saying of that shift in your brain and what happens when you notice it. But then when you also go to this shift of having gratitude, because as you said in the book, gratitude and fear can't live together at the same time.
Yeah, gratitude. You cannot process gratitude and fear at the same time. So it is one of the most powerful brain changers we have. And a lot of times, every time we tell ourselves we have to do something, we're inadvertently triggering that fight or flight response again. So when we realize, okay, actually the only thing I have to do today is breathe. Everything else is a choice. Now some people say, well, no it isn't. You say, it's a choice. It's a choice that if you didn't make, the consequences may really stink, but it's still a choice. And when we recognize that it's a choice, and then we want to take it to that level 500 course, which is to be appreciative or grateful that we have those choices. Oh man, it is. It's like wiping the slate clean. And I literally can be in the middle of the greatest frenzy, and if I can pause for even one breath and come up with even one thing I'm legitimately grateful for in that moment, it's really almost miraculous how much things shift in terms of the way that my brain works and what I'm able to actually get done in that state. So it's an important part of the process too, is that from first noticing and then recognizing that everything you're doing is a choice, and if I can look at it as an opportunity versus an obstacle, it just totally shifts my brain chemistry.
Yeah. I noticed that in myself just recently, even though as familiar as I am with this work and how much I love it. The other day I was feeding my toddler, and for anybody who's raised little ones and in toddlerhood, she is on her own timetable. And I was wanting to get breakfast, have her fed, and so that we could get going. And I caught myself having the thought, I don't have time for this, that she didn't want to eat. And I had the moment, I noticed it. And then I started to laugh. And I shifted to a place of gratitude of, isn't this funny? She's a little person right now, and this is temporary, and I can be grateful for this. And what a difference that made of taking me out of that moment of, there's not enough time, we need to get this done so we can get going. And then I just responded differently. And it can happen in a nanosecond.
It can, and I have people tell me all the time when I speak at different things around the country, they'll come running up to me afterwards and say, oh, I have this example, because they'd read it, they'd read about the concept in the book, and they say, and I tried it out, and everything from I was going to be really late to my plane, and I hadn't packed anything, and I paused and said, I notice I'm having the there's not enough time thought again, and how it shifted things, and suddenly priorities got clear, and what needed to happen next seemed to just almost, magically unfold. Or stories of, again, people who were so frenzied and they let themselves calm down for a second, and something they would have completely missed showed up in a way that saved them enormous amounts of time, money, energy, you name it. And so it's just, I love hearing those stories. I love your example too, because it's just a reminder, because the other way is such an old, it's like that old rut that the marble just wants to keep rolling back to. It's such an old way of being for a lot of us that we resist shifting out of it. And then when we do, oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
feels so much better. And we can get so much more done and so much more meaningful things done. I mean, how much more meaningful was that second of recognition and appreciation and connection to your toddler than whatever the heck it was that you were rushing off to do?
Right. And what it did also is that it brought me back to the present moment. Rather than thinking about where I needed to go or what I needed to be doing next, I came back into that moment, and then it felt so much better.
Right.
And so a lot of that has to do with the change in, so if you were to have been able to look at my brain in that moment, I'm guessing that my brain changed by me recognizing that I was having the thought, and then by moving to a place of gratitude as well, my brain chemistry changed in that moment.
Yeah. And the other thing is to do another step is just to replace that thought of there's not enough time or I have too much to do with something that's likely to serve you better. Okay. And for me, it's just there is enough time. When I finally realized that the story I've been telling myself day in and day out for decades of my life was arguing with reality. 24 hours is a fixed amount of time. So when I say there's not enough of it, that's like me, going outside and saying the sky is green, the sky is green, the sky is green all day long. Right. You must change the fact that the sky is blue. And I would never do that because that would be futile. Yet I was wailing and gnashing at my teeth at the fixed reality that is time all day long. And by saying there is enough time, and to quit, even though I'm, people will talk about me being a time management expert and my book was a bestseller in the time management category, I really think time management is baloney. To me, it's about embracing time. There is enough time. How does that completely shift the landscape of what my life looks like? Even on the days when there's a lot of things going on and a lot of life is happening. That totally changes. It takes away the superfluous stuff because when I'm in fight or flight mode, every priority feels the same. Right. So I've had clients call me who are CEOs of $1 million companies and say, I can tell I'm in panic mode and I need help. I need your help. I can't figure out what to do first. I've got this is based on a semi-real life example, but I've got to broker a $1 billion deal. I've got to get a haircut, and I need to figure out what's going on with my mom because she might be having a heart attack. And I don't know how to do it all. And I said, the fact that the haircut made it in that list is a pretty big indication that you're in fight or flight mode because it's everything coming at you feels equally serious. And everything feels like a threat. And it's not because you're stupid or anything. This is a brilliant human being. But that's what happens to us when we get in that mode. So when we can get out of that fight or flight mode and into what I call the 3 C's, calm, clear, connected space, then we can say, okay, my mom living or dying is really the number one priority in my life. And I would like to then, as soon as I get whatever actions need to get taken to ensure her safety and well-being, then I'm going to prioritize the most important action steps on this business deal. Haircut, schmercut, that's going to happen another day.
Right.
But that's what happens to us in that space.
So getting into the calm, clear, and connected space, does that happen by shifting the thought to, I have enough time? Is that how we get into that place?
I think it happens by either and or any of the steps we've talked about. Noticing, replacing the thought with one that's likely to serve you better, like there is enough time, and or recognizing and looking for the things that you're grateful for and ways that you're experiencing enoughness in whatever form that is.
Yeah.
Everything's okay in this moment. Those all are ways that take you into that different, calm, clear, connected space. Sometimes I just use one of them. Sometimes it takes all 3, depending on what circumstances have triggered the reaction in me.
Yeah, that's great. So simply by noticing, then that can be one tool that you can use to shift into that calm, clear, connected space.
Yep.
And then if you need a little bit more, then you can also work on shifting the thought, looking at how you do have enough time. That is reality. There's 24 hours a day for everyone. There is enough time. And then even adding in or gratitude as a place, as a tool of getting us there.
I love it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic, and something that all of us, I think, can use in an instant and make a shift, just like a downshift, so quickly.
Yeah, and again, I keep going back to it because I was a time management tool junkie because I wanted to get more efficient and productive and stop feeling all panicked and frenzied or overwhelmed all the time. And I still love a lot of the tools, and I've developed my own tools around efficiency and productivity for sure that I think work really well and to move us from that chaos to calm. And none of them work if we're trying to launch them from a foundation of fight or flight. I always say it's a little like being a pole vaulter and trying to launch from quicksand. You're just not going to get very far. And you're going to be really exhausted by the time you try it a few times. And eventually you realize, oh, wait, there is enough time. Or I notice I'm having that there's not enough time thought again. How can I be grateful for what is here right now and let that energy motivate and launch me into the best priority or action step? Wow. I mean, that means a little effort lets me launch a really long way.
Wow. Yeah. Is there any other last takeaway that you would want to give anybody who hasn't quite read your book yet, but they're really wanting to understand how to reclaim time in their lives?
Well, I think, the biggest thing is we cannot beat ourselves up into having more time or into suddenly being motivated to get stuff done if we're procrastinating, or to be less busy if we're hiding out in the addiction to busy where a lot of us do. We can't beat ourselves up or berate ourselves into a shift in action, or at least one that's lasting. So it just starts from being kind enough and curious enough and open enough to consider changing your brain chemistry so that you can launch action from a new place, so that you can stop trying to gear up for everything and instead let yourself plug into a different form of inspiration that helps you to show up in the world in the way that you were meant to show up, and in the way that feels like it's a lot more closely aligned with your values and who you really are.
Right. And how you want to operate in whatever you do.
Yep.
Yeah, that is just fantastic. I love this conversation. I was so thrilled that you came and joined us today virtually by Skype. I love it. For those who have not read Jill's book yet, There's Not Enough Time. You can order it on Amazon. There's also a link directly from Jill's website, which is jillfarmer.com. And Jill, thank you again. This was such a pleasure, so much fun. I love this topic.
Me too. I can talk about you with it all day. And thank you so much for letting me reach out to your awesome peeps, and for just being you and recognizing how inspiring you can be to help other people show up in the world in the way they want to show up. So it was a delight to be with you, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Me too. Thank you so much, Jill.
Take care.
All right, you too.